We spoke yesterday of the injuries to second-year defensive ends Alex Wright and Isiah Thomas. Well, today we got the official word. We're going to get to all that and more. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things dog pound, LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. My suggestion, of course, become part of the crowd. Join the everyday crowd. Almost 6,300 strong by subscribing to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And Locked On Browns, it's always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcast. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, 7th season now with Locked On Browns. Appreciate all of you for being along on this ride with me. We spoke yesterday that the word was given that Alex Wright and Isiah Thomas were going to miss some time, both second-year defensive ends. Knee injuries. Today, actually, got a little more. Both second-year players, Alex Wright and, of course, Isiah Thomas, had knee surgeries performed today by the same surgeon. I don't know if it was back-to-back, side-to-side, how it exactly went. But Alex Wright and Isiah Thomas both had arthroscopic knee surgery done today. No real determination yet on a timetable. Couple I've kind of gotten able to reach out to said maybe you're talking, somewhere around the bye, which, as we all know, is week 5. Really, really difficult scenario for both players. Alex Wright, we got to see Thursday night in the Hall of Fame game, which is where he was injured. You started to see a player maybe where the lights were going on a little bit, starting to have a little more confidence in what his role was, my abilities versus what my role. And, Alex Wright was all over the field, and I thought Alex Wright looked pretty, solid Thursday evening. Isiah Thomas, he's in a really difficult spot because Isiah Thomas is in that odd spot whether or not, he was a certainty for this roster, which was not certain. So for Isiah Thomas is a really, really difficult blow as, you try here to fight through it. And it's always difficult to be the injured guy and to be the extended injured guy. And for both players, I guess at this point, we're probably talking about 2 months of time here. I am no doctor, nor did I stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. My thoughts would be that it's probably a meniscus for both. Because you get the scope, then you start the rehab period, then it's returning to practice on individual drills, then it's slowly returning to team drills. Could also maybe be, something MCL related. But both players, knee injuries taken care of today. As I mentioned yesterday, for the Browns, the difficulty here is not necessarily going to be once the regular season starts. The Browns have Myles Garrett. They have Zadarius Smith. They have Ogbonnia Okoronkwo. You have Isaiah McGuire. It's 4 defensive ends. Teams tend to normally dress between 4 to 5 defensive ends for a game. The problem is going to be how are you going to manufacture here the rest of the preseason? Because obviously Myles Garrett is going to take a handful of snaps, if nothing else. Zadarius Smith, probably the same thing. You think Okoronkwo would probably play a tad bit and certainly maybe a little bit more than Zadarius or Myles will. But then it's filling out, who's going to take the rest of these snaps. And, it'll be great to see Isaiah McGuire get some extended work. I think everybody's kind of excited to see what the young man has. Had a really, really successful career at Missouri in the SEC. If you put on the Georgia tape from last year, he had a phenomenal year for the Missouri Tigers against the Georgia Bulldogs. This was a guy who truly looked like somebody who should have been playing for Georgia as opposed to Missouri. He was one guy that did not shrink, did not back away, did not turtle up away from the challenge of facing the eventual national champions in the Georgia Bulldogs. But in the same respect, you don't want to burn the young man out in the summertime. So it does bring up this little interesting thing of, what's going to be and, who's gets an opportunity here. And, you talk about a player like Lonnie Phelps Jr. out of Kansas. Lonnie Phelps, at his workouts ran a 4.55. His 20-yard shuttle, his 10-yard shuttle were both really, really good. 31 bench press reps. So even though he's only 6'2", 244 pounds, 31 bench reps is a really, really impressive number. Had 13.5 tackles for loss last year for Kansas. Had 9.5 sacks. So this is a player we're going to get to see a little bit more of here, and probably an extended look at here, over the next 3 preseason games. And there may be a shot he ends up on the final 53, but it's going to come with some tinkering because Alex Wright and Isiah Thomas can't go on to, a IR list until after the Browns submit their final 53. So that they have to be on that list. So then now the Browns, and even if somebody shows themselves out here, it's going to be really difficult for the way the Browns maneuver this. Again, I do think Alex Wright is a roster lock. I'm not sure on Isiah Thomas, but this is going to be something the Browns are going to have to work with as far as getting down to the final cut downs to 53, because in order to probably keep Alex Wright certainly on the roster and maybe possibly Isiah Thomas, that means you're going to have to cut some other players, and then you go through the fingers crossed sweating process of whether or not these guys will clear waivers, and then you can bring them back, and then maybe IR and Alex Wright or IR and Isiah Thomas. Other Browns-related news here today, Kareem Hunt, and this was a little bit wild. Kareem Hunt did go down to New Orleans, but apparently the way the story broke is basically as Kareem Hunt was walking into the building, the Indianapolis Colts offered a significant amount of money. I don't want to say maybe significant's a little much, but offered an amount of money that maybe he knew the Saints truly weren't ready to match. So basically, Kareem Hunt took, the meeting of the coaches. Hello, how's everybody doing? And basically got out of Dodge as fast as he got there to head off to Indianapolis. Look, Alvin Kamara's on a 3-game suspension. The Jonathan Taylor situation in the Colts, all of this, it's crazy. And, for Kareem, nothing is guaranteed as far as, any job with either of these teams. But, Kareem, look, and I don't blame him, man. Go get your bag here, man. As a running back, you're getting closer to the finish line than you certainly are beginning of, the starting line, of course. So, but we'll see what way it works out. But Kareem Hunt, obviously still in limbo. Jadeveon Clowney apparently was down and met with the Ravens today. Whatever, look, Jadeveon Clowney, when Jadeveon Clowney wants to be a great football player, Jadeveon Clowney can be a great football player. But when Jadeveon Clowney, and this is sadly, I don't want to say majority of the time, but a good amount of the time, Jadeveon Clowney is a guy that worries about one thing and one thing only, and that's Jadeveon Clowney. Browns don't need these type of people around them anymore. They certainly don't need him in the building, even though last year was tough and it was a bad season. Sending him out the door and telling him, I'm not going to have you around my young players, because an attitude like this is not what we're trying to teach these kids. So for the Browns, Jadeveon Clowney, I'm not sweating about that one. And Kareem Hunt, look, even with the Jerome Ford injury, it's not a player I'm interested in. When Nick Chubb can go for 5 yards a carry last year behind this Cleveland Browns offensive line, but Kareem Hunt can only go for 3.8, I am good with that. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Browns running backs here when we get to segment 2. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Our friends at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Looking for a second-year fantasy football wide receiver who can drive your team to big points while he catches on with a new starting quarterback? Then expect a smooth ride when investing in the Saints' Chris Olave. Olave was dangerous as a number 1 in every capacity as a rookie, and there's no reason to pump on the brakes now that he has Derek Carr throwing to him. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. It'll make sure it's the right fit for your car because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up. Because now you'll always be set up for success from the get-go. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle needs is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay, guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Your latest Locked On Browns host, Jeff Lloyd, again, 7th season here with you all at Locked On Browns. This is the year. This is the one, right? We got that little taste of it in 2020. This is the one. We're going, basically, from cheap, cheap wine to very, very expensive champagne. Yeah, and I appreciate everybody being along here. Now, the Browns running back position, of course, now this has become an issue as well. And it was weird. We've all spent all this time talking about Jerome Ford and whether or not the Browns were going to bring in somebody, especially to, take his gig. And to this point, Browns still have not done that. And we'll probably see the same rotation. We're probably going to see the same rotation unless somebody else comes in here over the next 3 games. It'll be John Kelly, who I think is a smart back. I think is an intelligent back. I think the one thing you notice with John Kelly, as opposed to the other running backs, is just maybe doesn't have the overall athletic gifts, speed, maneuverability, cutting ability, those types of things. Demetric Felton, to tell me here that we're talking about this in 2023, and I think Demetric Felton is probably more of a roster lock here in 2023 than he was in 2022. It's just crazy, basically how things work. But Demetric Felton brings a lot of things he can do to the table. Obviously, he can run with the football. Obviously, he has a decent receiving resume here with the Browns. Was a former wide receiver in his days as well at UCLA. He also has return ability. These are all things that right now are playing a huge, huge favor for Demetric Felton, a possibility of making the Browns final 53. Hassan Hall got into the game late in the Hall of Fame game. And I thought was pretty impressive with the limited amount of touches. You really have to think the workload for Hassan Hall is probably going to tick up here. There's no reason to not give this kid a little bit more of an opportunity, give him an opportunity to show himself out. He had the Louisville background before Georgia Tech, does bring return ability as well. So we'll see if the Browns start to use him a little bit more in that aspect, in that respect here, because you got to remember Jerome Ford was your number 1 kick returner last year. So right now that gig is open, and we'll get to that in segment 3 when we talk a little bit about positional battles going on here right now. So, that opportunity for Hassan Hall is there. John Kelly, one-trick pony. All he can do is run the ball. Felton, of course, like we said, multifaceted player. And of course, Hassan Hall, also a multifaceted player. These are things that are really going huge and in favor for both of these guys right now. The Browns, Nick Chubb, if he takes a preseason snap, I'll be stunned. There is no reason to, and especially now that you don't have Jerome Ford and you don't really have a clear vision as to who the number 2 running back is or exactly how you're going to play, any reps in game action starting week 1 when Nick Chubb isn't on the field at the running back position. So you absolutely have to preserve the, you think about it like, that old, nice sports car that your father, your grandfather, your uncle had, kept in a garage. You only saw it maybe every now and then on a Sunday. The Browns have to do that right now with Nick Chubb because it's a huge fallback. When we're talking about players that were roster bubbles, and any one of these guys, John Kelly, Demetric Felton, or of course Hassan Hall, you viewed these guys as roster bubbles. These guys are now in contention to be the number 2 running back, and God forbid, possibly the number 1 running back. And that is a really, really scary thought right now for this team, for this franchise. Do they do something about it? That's the question. And there are free agent running back names out there. I mentioned Ezekiel Elliott yesterday. Who knows if there really is anything to that. We know they have met with former Los Angeles Rams running back Darrell Henderson Jr. Darrell Henderson, his first year, rookie year, not much, not a ton of success. His final 3 years with the Los Angeles Rams under Sean McVay, who is a great play caller and knows basically how to play call things open. Darrell Henderson had over 4 yards per carry in his final 3 years with the Los Angeles Rams. Do the Browns stoke that fire? Is it something they're interested in? Because Nick Chubb's still going to continue to get veteran days off, and the Browns are still going to limit the snap counts. and rightfully so. And the injury to Jerome Ford is not going to change any way or any possibility on what you view is the correct course for Nick Chubb. So the Browns have a lot to deal with at the running back position. Didn't need this Jerome Ford injury. Jerome Ford didn't need this injury. So it's a tough spot for both. Jerome Ford wanted to go out there, basically wanted to, put the naysayers, to rest, put them on mute, so to speak, by going out and being able to put together, a pretty good summer. But as we all know, the hamstring yesterday, we still don't have a timetable on him, although we did get clarity on Isiah Thomas. We did get clarity, of course, on Alex Wright. No clarity yet on Jerome Ford, probably waiting MRI results before we hear something. Again, hamstrings, it could be a 2-week thing, which I doubt it is the way he went down. Talking maybe a 4 to a 6-week thing, which puts you in the same boat. Beginning of September, first couple of weeks probably in jeopardy. And the Browns, who always seem to be conservative with these types of things and conservative with their injuries, you're probably talking more maybe about the possibility that we don't see Jerome Ford. He could be another guy till after the bye. But again, it creates that difficult spot. You've got to put him on the final 53 before you can do something else with him. So these are things that the Browns are working through right now. And it's not the easiest time. And it's certainly not the easiest thing to do when you have players that you think are locks for your final 53, but are not going to be available until, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, et cetera, et cetera. So this makes for a difficult spot here. And that's the thing. You try to get people in here, and this could be something maybe the Browns don't address till after final cutdowns, as far as bringing in a veteran running back, because it's going to make for a difficulty in pairing together a final 53-man roster. It's just the way the league works. It's obviously the rules and enforce, roster construction and roster restrictions by the NFL. So the Browns, this is a game that they, basically have to tap dance around here. And, what if it was, oh, well, we really like Hassan Hall. We're not ready to let go of him because he could get scooped up. What if it is we really like, Demetric Felton now, the way the offense is, because Demetric Felton technically could be, a running back, could be a wide receiver, could be a return man. We could use him in the slot. The Browns don't really have a lot of slot wide receivers, so that's something else that he could give to them. So they're really in a tough spot here, the Browns. They have a lot to work on and a lot to figure out here. So maybe this veteran running back that we all thought was maybe coming, maybe it's something that doesn't happen until September. And even if they do bring him in now, the guy could be cut. And if you remember, they did this a couple of years ago with Greg Robinson. He could be a final roster cut, and then a guy that's brought back in the subsequent days afterwards. So the Browns got a lot of work to do here. These injuries, and granted, and knock on wood, because they're not serious, they're not season-ending injuries, which certainly helps. But you don't really have a true timetable on the return of any of these guys, being Ford, being Thomas, and of course being Alex Wright. We're going to continue on here. We're going to talk about some, camp battles that are still going on here, because I think there's a couple good ones, between 3 positions that nobody's really talking on just yet. So we're going to hit on those just a little bit here. Your latest Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate you all for being along for the ride with me. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day, whether it's here on YouTube. And if it is on YouTube, join the everyday crowd, almost 6,300 strong. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. We're always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. The way media is working now, and of course, a lot of media outlets going away from day-to-day coverage of your favorite sports team. To me, I don't get it. I was a kid that every day I wanted the newspaper. I wanted to know what was going on anywhere with any local team. So, but it's great for us because this is what we do here. This was the premise on what Locked On was started on, and this will be the premise, and this will be the focal point of what we do forever. Your team every day. Yeah, it's a catchy slogan, but it's also basically the billboard and the blueprint of what the Locked On Podcast Network is. I said we're going to talk a little bit here about positional battles, and we're in this odd spot here. And Marquise Goodwin's another one, because Marquise Goodwin would end up on a different list, obviously, because his injury is more medical. It's not his situation is medical. It is not an injury. And the Browns have no updates on that. And again, I've told you, my thoughts and condolences go out to Marquise Goodwin, because he and his wife have already gone through a ton a ton in the time he's been in the NFL personally within their family and, obviously trying to raise a family. And it's really, really a tough spot for a guy who really deserves good things. And, Marquise Goodwin gets dealt another heavy hand to deal with. I know the old line of, God only gives, so much to who can handle it. But, for a guy like Marquise Goodwin, good on him that he can continue to do all the things he does and carry himself the way he does. But, you do wonder sometimes, man, how do some people deal with all this stuff being put on their plate? But it does open an opportunity. And I know a lot of people want to talk about and possibly, like Jalen Darden, but Jalen Darden's in a really tough spot. The old line of, you ain't making the club from the tub. Jalen Darden participating, well, that's not doing anything for anybody. Meanwhile, you got other players out there who are getting their opportunity. Jalen Darden thought maybe he was viewed upon as maybe like he was a little bit of an upgrade. I don't want to say upgrade, but, trying to find that guy that they thought they had in Jakeem Grant a year ago before he went down with an Achilles. Well, Jakeem Grant's taken apart in, kick return drills. He's getting run with the first team offense. He's had times in the NFL where he's a really just absolute beast of a player, small doses, but there were games where, he was just an absolute unstoppable force. Anthony Schwartz still hanging around, puncher's chance. I know everybody, and I can't stand it. Anthony Schwartz is a million times better at football than almost any single one of us are at any aspect within our entire lives. So the jokes I don't get. Yes, the kid has had a really, really difficult time. But for a player like Anthony Schwartz, I'll root for, and I will root for forever. But, do I think at the end of the day his chance is here? No. And I think his best chance for success in the NFL is probably going somewhere else and getting an opportunity somewhere else. But he's going to play. And he's going to get reps here. And if he can find a way to make some plays, there's still that opportunity that he can sneak his way on to this Browns 53-man roster. Because I do think one of the reasons they liked Marquise Goodwin so much is they felt Marquise Goodwin was somebody that could do what they had hoped Anthony Schwartz would always be able to do. But, for Goodwin, really, really tough spot to be in. Austin Watkins, it's a really good story right now. It is. It's going to have to continue. If he could put together another strong preseason game, all of a sudden, Austin Watkins, this opportunity is there. And it could be a very, very real opportunity for a player like Austin Watkins. I'm not ruling against him. I'm not rooting against anybody. I just think he might have one of the longer shots here. But if, he continues to play and Anthony can't get things right, then that's an opportunity for Austin Watkins. Jakeem Grant, again, somebody's going to have to return the ball early in the season. And even if Jerome Ford is your full-time running back number 2, I don't know if I necessarily want him returning kicks. He might be too important to have that role. So that's something that most likely you're going to have to look at that he can do or Demetric Felton could do. So these special team opportunities could be make or break for some of these guys who are in, a roster tug of war, basically, as far as making the final 53. The 4 safety position. Look, we know this team is obviously going to run out Juan Thornhill, Grant Delpit, and of course Rodney McLeod. There's no question about that. But then you get to D'Anthony Bell, obviously a second-year player now, was able to play and contribute on special teams last year. Limited game reps, and D'Anthony's a little bit of an older player. Ronnie Hickman, for me, Ronnie Hickman, I just think this is one that the Browns are going to keep this player around, even though he's an undrafted free agent coming from Ohio State, playing against the big teams, playing in the big games, playing in 100,000 seat stadiums. Ronnie Hickman's going to be a guy that continues to get a lot of playing time here over the next couple of weeks to see whether or not the opportunity is there for him to make this final 53. I think he can just do a little bit more than D'Anthony Bell can do, but it also means Ronnie Hickman's going to have to show some ability on special teams and covering kicks here for the Browns to ultimately choose him over a player that was on the roster last year. But do keep in mind, it is a new special teams coach here, of course, in Bubba Ventrone, so everybody starts with a clean slate. So Ronnie Hickman can make up that ground on D'Anthony Bell faster than, if he's able to perform to a level that obviously meets the eye for Bubba Ventrone. Tanner McAllister, this is another guy. I mean, he and Hickman are both versatile. They can play more than safety. They can play some outside corner if they need be. Tanner McAllister's got athletic ability. And again, Ohio State, the big games, the 100,000 people crowd, the moment's never going to be too big for a player, from coming from Ohio State. So these opportunities for these guys, they're huge. And we'll see if one of these guys can take advantage of it. If I'm a betting man here, it's going to be Ronnie Hickman, and I think it's going to end up being the 4th safety for the Cleveland Browns. The fourth linebacker position, Adams was brought in, obviously a guy who had a relationship, with Bubba Ventrone. But again, injuries are not doing him any favors whatsoever. Jordan Kunaszyk, I'm getting closer and closer to the thing that Jordan Kunaszyk is going to find a way to make this roster. When you have a special teams coach who probably likes you, which Jordan Kunaszyk plays special teams, when the defensive coordinator likes you, when Jim Schwartz puts on your jersey, that's probably a good sign that he feels pretty good about him. Jacob Phillips, we haven't seen him play yet. I'm assuming he's going to get some playing time this week. And for Jacob, it's kind of like last chance here with the Browns. So much time missed over his time here with the Cleveland Browns with a player I was extremely high on. Thought it was going to be a really, really significant player for this guy. But again, you're not around and you miss so much time with injuries. Other players get opportunities, which puts you in a difficult spot, obviously, to show who you are, what you are. Even if some of the flashes have been good for Jacob Phillips, it's always about the overall resume. And then there's Charlie Thomas from Georgia Tech. And definitely caught some eyes Thursday night in the Hall of Fame game. The hardest hit from the Hall of Fame game, the one where everybody said, "Oh!" Charlie Thomas had that hit and hit the guy so hard. He hit him so hard, the ball carrier fumbled the ball, and it went flying out of bounds. And it was about 11 yards away from the sidelines. So when you hit somebody that hard and cause a fumble that rolls, it didn't roll. This thing splatted 11 yards all the way out of bounds. That is a hit where everybody in the building on the sidelines, oh, who's that kid? And I guarantee even the Jets guys, whoa, who was that guy who made that hit? So a guy like Charlie Thomas, you get on a kick return unit, you get on punt coverage. Now you go get one of those as well. Now you've ingratiated yourself with the defensive coaches. You've ingratiated yourself with the special teams coaches. And all of a sudden now it becomes an opportunity where you might be able to make a roster. But you go out there and you hit people like Charlie Thomas did Thursday night in the Hall of Fame game, they're going to find a way to keep you around. They'll find a way to get you on a practice squad because obviously they're going to want to put the time in, the effort in, the work in to hone you to see if there truly is a player that can contribute in the NFL. So for Charlie Thomas, keep it up, keep it going. This has, obviously we're waiting here and continuing here Friday night, home, Commanders come to town. We're not sure yet how much, and keep in mind, I think it was 37 players that didn't play in the first game. I'm sure that number is not going to be as high this week against the Commanders. So we're starting to see some other players here. But the Browns dealing with a lot. Official word on Alex Wright and Isiah Thomas both look to be out probably somewhere till October would be my guess. Kareem Hunt was in New Orleans for a hot minute, went to Indianapolis afterwards. Looks like maybe there's a better opportunity for him there. Jadeveon Clowney, just Jadeveon does what Jadeveon does. The running back room, again, we're going to see the way this all plays out here. The Jerome Ford injury certainly did not help things. But it does open the door for, the other three guys in that room to see, what opportunities they have, still camp battles at wide receiver, of course, the force safety, and of course at linebacker. Appreciate everybody again who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day, whether it's here on YouTube. And if it is, join the everyday party and subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. We're always available. We are always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB. On ELOB. Let's go, Browns.